My name is Serna, and I'm the director of the Student Money Management Office here at Austin Community College. And I'd like to welcome you to the very first episode of The Forum. The Forum is a roundtable talk show that gives us space to openly discuss pertinent topics concerning ACC and our community with various faculty, staff, and students. Today, we're talking about money and how to set you up for financial wellness. We'll do a deep dive into making a plan for your money and offer some tips and advice to set you up for financial success in college and beyond. Joining me today are 3 of our peer money mentors. This semester, we have 12 peer money mentors who are students at ACC, and they spend their Friday afternoons discussing money, and then they work on projects and events that allow them to share their financial knowledge with their peers at ACC. So if you see any of these students on campus and you have questions about money, I know they'd love to talk with you. Let me introduce you to Lisa Medina, who is studying social work here at ACC, Damian Akala, who recently graduated and is now at Texas State. Right. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And Krishna who is studying early elementary education. Yes. So let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to start with a question from each of you. Okay. Where did you learn about money? Lisa?
I learned about money from my grandmother. She had a second grade education, and I would see her on a daily basis, sometimes twice a day, checking her bank, her bank ledger or her bank statements, and calling what the bank calls, it used to be called Audi, where you can get your checks confirmed of what's gone through and what hasn't gone through. And so growing up, I would watch her pay her bills as well. So that is something that I was able to take with me, and to know that that's something you were supposed to do. Now, growing up, I was never taught how to pay bills or how to manage your checking account. So as a young adult, I definitely struggled with that. I didn't really understand what a checking account was, or how to use it, or how not to use it, or actually what even a savings account was for. So I definitely was able to see those things growing up, but just never had anyone to actually show me step by step what it was I needed to do as an adult.
Damian?
I completely agree, Lisa. I didn't learn finances or money management in school. Instead, growing up, I would have to ask my mom, if there's something that costs money, or like how much does a house cost, or how much does a car cost? How do people get these things? Well, school's not going to teach me. So what other resources are there out there that I could use? So I started using the internet. The internet was coming of age. Googling everything, any question that I had when it came to money. How to be good with money was something I was looking up last night. How to build your credit and how to maintain it. And it turns out to maintain it is not hard, but it's very easy to fall, to break it. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But those are my 2 ways that I mostly learned growing up.
And sometimes there's good information on the internet.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
But there's also some poor advice on the internet.
It's not always correct, and that's something that you really have to take into consideration when looking at these websites. If you're reading an article on Wiki, of how to manage money, well, anybody can write anything on there. So you don't really want to apply all of it to your life, because, what if it's not credible?
Mm-hmm. Okay. For me, it was from my parents. I remember growing up, before my mom married my stepdad and I, we were very poor. So whenever we went with my stepdad, I remember we used to go on a lot of trips, all over the place. So sometimes we used to go to Mexico and all kinds of cities and stay in, nice hotels. Or we used to go for Christmas or the holidays, to Kentucky, where he's from, and, nice hotels too, food, presents all the time whenever he used to go out of town. And I don't know, I guess I just thought that it was magic or something. I don't know where it came from. But then I remember seeing him always, everywhere we went, he would always be swiping cards. And they were not always the same. They were always different kinds of cards. And I remember him opening up his wallet, and it was very thick, because he had a lot of cards in there. So I didn't really know what it meant or anything. I just remember later my mom, getting after him, you have too many credit cards and you're not supposed to be doing that. So she would just, eventually make him, go down on the amount of credit cards that he had. And I think he went down to like maybe 3. But then I just, knew it was, inherently bad. So I just, after that, I was kind of scared, credit cards. So I did not get a credit card for a long time. But that's all he would do the whole time that we were growing up, just credit cards. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
We ask the same question at the beginning of every one of our workshops, and very rarely are there more than 2 students who raise their hand and say they learned how to manage money in school.
Sure.
Thankfully, more and more high schools are incorporating financial literacy into instruction, but for the most part, we turn 18 and we're just supposed to know how to manage our money. So most of us have learned how to manage our money on our own and by messing up. I know I had a few snafus with credit cards early on, which helped me quickly learn what not to do. In the Student Money Management Office, we want to help students understand how to manage their money without making the same mistakes some of us made. So for example, the first credit card I applied for, I did so because I would get 20% off of a pair of jeans I really, really wanted. So I signed up for the credit card, walked out with my jeans, and then I moved to a new apartment. And so my credit card bill never came. So I simply thought I didn't owe the money. And I learned a really important lesson. Just because the credit card bill doesn't get to you doesn't mean you don't owe the money. And if you don't pay your credit card on time, you get charged interest and fees, especially if you're late. So credit cards really love to offer instant incentives to young people, but what's tricky is knowing about interest rates and just how much extra it will cost you to pay off that debt. Krishna, what's one mistake you made with money that others could learn from?
Okay, for mine, it's a very big one, and it's one that college students could learn from. Whenever I was 18 and I got out of high school and I went into college, I went into a big university, and so I had the tuition debt. Basically, I stayed at the dorms too, so I had to pay for that, and so I got grants and I got loans, but it was still a very big amount. I want to say it was maybe about $8,000 a semester, including with the meal plan and everything. And so I didn't think about applying for scholarships or anything like that. I just it will get covered. So whenever I didn't actually get to finish school, I didn't pay attention, and so I just withdrew. And so later I had a debt of $17,000, and so I could not afford to pay for this debt because I did not have a degree. So I was taking odd jobs here and there, and since I could not afford to pay for it, I just let it go. And so later, of course, the government does not forget, and so they came, and what they did was they seized my my income tax. And so I'm a single mother right now, and I have 2 kids, and it was a pretty sizable amount. It was about $8,000, and so they kept it all. And so after that, I encouraged myself, okay, they kept all of this already, you might as well just pay it off. So I just went ahead and paid it off, and so I finally paid off, that $17,000. I'm debt free right now, no, loans of any kind, but I strongly encourage you guys to not let your loans go into default, because it comes back and bites you, even worse, with all the interest that it has accrued and everything too. So yeah.
That's some good advice. Yeah. Damian, what was a mistake that you made that others could learn from?
A mistake that I made that others can learn from. Well, when I was 18, as lots of funny stories start. When I was 18, you do a lot of things when you're 18 and 22. But when I was 18, me and my mother, we went to a used car dealership, and we wanted to get me a car. I was going to go to school. I had a job. I needed a form of transportation other than my mother's car. So as my driver's license was on its way in the mail, we ended up getting a car, ended up being under my mother's name. And what that did was it prevented me from building my credit for those 2 years of having that car, and instead built on my mother's credit, which is not bad. I'm not saying, don't help your mom build her credit. I think that's great. But it could have helped build my H credit history of having a credit since I was 18. And now I'm barely starting to do that with my current car. So that's just time lost, which is very important when it comes to not only finances, but dealing with money, is time. And that's something you kind of learn the hard way sometimes, you know, because you can't get time back.
Okay, true. Lisa, how about you?
For me, I would have to go back to, again, when I first opened up my first checking account. I had no idea, you know, how to manage it or what really entailed to have a checking account. I knew that I had gotten a good job and that I was making decent money, and that this large amount of money was being deposited every 2 weeks. And so I just started to spend, and I started to not really pay attention to what I was spending, because I remembered that that was a large deposit, so that's all I could see. And so what ended up happening is I ended up accruing charges on my account because I overdrafted. So I had overdraft fees, which the bank would charge me $35, and then the merchant would charge me another $30. So each pay period, I was paying out to the bank and merchants anywhere between $200 and $400. At that time, I didn't realize that this was money that I could be using for other things. This was money that I could be saving. I just looked at it as, well, I have the money, so it's being paid off, so it's no big deal. And I probably lost out on a couple of $1,000s just from not understanding the process and not understanding how overdraft really hurts you.
Yeah, those are all good mistakes, if you will, that now other people can learn from and hopefully not repeat those same mistakes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back with more in just a minute.
Did you know? You can become a mentor at ACC. Make an impact. Mentors play an important role in student success. Guide and encourage. Students with mentors do better in school and are less likely to drop out.
The mentor is not only a motivator, but it's also a guide for them, a friend.
It's a really key component of the mentoring, because students need to have a connection with the community and sort of, you know, just to give them kind of a network of support outside of the classroom.
And the mentor can help you out with pretty much any problem you have at school or for your classes as well.
I know that if I struggle in any class, I have somebody there for me.
It just changed me. You know, it's made me a better person, I think.
Become a mentor. For more information, visit www.austincc.edu/catchthenext.
A budget doesn't have to be complicated, but it does need to be out of your head. So write it down in a notebook, use a spreadsheet, or use an app. Do what works for you, but get it out of your head. Krishna, if you were sitting down with a friend and helping that person make a written budget, how would you get them started?
I would tell them to write down all the monthly income and all the expenses and include your fixed monthly expenses, and those are expenses that don't change month to month, like your rent, your car payment, or your cell phone bill. And then include your flexible monthly expenses like gas and groceries. And finally, don't forget about those expenses that only happen once or twice a year, like your car registration or your holiday spending.
Okay, so say you do that and your expenses are more than your income. What do you do then?
Look at expenses you can cut back on. For me, one of the things that I cut back on was buying sodas at the vending machines, because the vending machines, they could be anywhere from $2 to $2.50. If you buy a 6-pack of sodas at the store, you can buy a 6-pack for anywhere from $2.50 to $3.50, and so you'll get 6 sodas instead of 1. So that's a huge savings right there for me, because I do count on my sodas daily.
You can also look at ways to increase your income through ACC scholarships, getting a side hustle, another job, babysitting the kids, from your neighbor, or even dog sitting. Pet sitting is becoming very popular. nowadays. You know, you can go on an app and just look at different positions and, oh, doc said 2 to 4, $200. You know, I've seen that before. Emails that I get. It's just, you know, be careful though, because, you know, who knows how trustworthy they can be, but side hustles are out there, as well as scholarship opportunities, deadlines.
And make sure you're completing the FAFSA, which is a free application for federal student aid every year. The FAFSA for the 2020-2021 school year comes out on October 1st. Also kind of maybe make sure that you're looking out for the scholarship workshops, which sometimes we do offer. The scholarship deadlines are November 1st for ACC. FAFSA determines whether you're eligible for grants, like the federal Pell Grant, which is money you don't have to repay, and it also determines your eligibility for student loans. Student loans you have to repay, but do keep in mind, just because you're offered them doesn't mean that you have to take them.
When we come back from a quick break, we'll pick up our conversation and talk about how to incorporate savings into your budget.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about.
Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.
We've got to shine a light on community colleges. We've got to shine a light that you don't need a 4-year college degree to be successful.
Through ACC, we can provide those bridges to opportunity, those bridges to hope.
This initiative, this effort, what ACC does is just critical to this city right now.
You know, when we're talking to students about money, we always start the conversation with budgeting. A budget is a plan for your money. One day, if you win the lottery, we want you to be in control of your money so that you get those winnings and you know smart tactics that will allow you to stretch your money the furthest it can go. If you manage your lottery winnings intelligently, you can have money for the rest of your life. Now, we've all heard stories of lottery winners going broke and ending up worse off than they were before they won the lottery. And that happened because they probably didn't have a written plan for their money. So it all starts with making a plan for your money, a budget. And we really stress the importance of getting a budget out of your head. So tell me if this has ever happened to you before. We start the beginning of the week and you might have $20 in your pocket, your purse, wherever it is that you keep your money. And you go through the week, you go through all your classes, and then Thursday, before your last class, you decide to stop at the cafe for a coffee or a snack. You reach into your pocket, your purse, wherever it is you keep your money, and that $20 just isn't there, but you're not exactly sure where it went. I know that's happened to me many times before. It's probably happened to you too. The point is, we have too many financial transactions that happen on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to be able to keep all of that in our heads. Now, there are many different ways to budget. The way that you budget doesn't necessarily matter, but the importance is that you budget. Damian, you don't carry a budget in your head, do you?
Of course not. I used to carry a budget in my head, but then I learned it didn't work. Trying to spend the minimum amount of money weekly in my head worked. But once I looked at the numbers to make me start a budget, I was spending twice as much as I should have, even 3 times in a week. But now, by using an Excel sheet, which is what I use now, I'm able to type in all the numbers, and it's a template. You don't have to do anything other than type in the numbers that you have from your bank account app. You just type in the numbers and it comes out a number of how much you have left. And then I can evaluate my 50, 30, 20 plan. 50% goes to bills, 30% goes to savings, and 20% is my leisure spending. Monthly, and I like to check on that every month if I can, every other week, which is great. And it's helped me, not all the time, but it's helped me become more self-aware of how much money I do spend.
Great, thank you. Krishna, how do you keep your budget?
I'm a tech girl, so I have an iPhone, and so I do everything on my iPhone. So for me, I use an app called Mint, and so it basically breaks down, your whole budget, and it's really neat because you kind of see it kind of like a supply, and it also breaks down if you have to, into each individual, section. But you name your section, and if it's, towards bills, savings, leisure, and it breaks it down even to what, kinds of leisure too. And so it keeps track to it asks for your data from your financial institution, so like your bank. And then my favorite part of it too is sometimes we don't make ourselves accountable for your credit cards, but it even asks for information for your credit card. So it's really, really keeping track of everything that you're spending from your credit cards, to bills that you have to pay. So it really knows how much you have. And then it also makes me kind of accountable too, because for example, sometimes, it's my birthday and my mom gives me money and I don't want to deposit it because I want to spend it. And so, I may not have spent anything that week, because, I'm trying to stick to a budget. And so it sends me an email, Krishna, did you really not spend any money this week? And I'm like, well, so then I kind of have to go back and fix the numbers, but I like it because it's, I open my phone and it's there. So it's very easy to keep track of, my budget with that. So yeah.
How many times do you check it? Do you look at it every day, or do you just look at it once a week?
It depends, I guess. I tend to look more at it, whenever I know that bills are going to be coming out of it, so my car payment, I already know, but for the most part I do, stick to my budget, pretty good, so I know. But I would say maybe once a day to two, maybe once every 2 days or so. But like I said, when I know the bills are coming out, it's I'm really making sure that everything is, on schedule. So yeah.
And is Mint a free app?
It is a free app. Yeah, so yeah, I think it even keeps track of your credit score too, so you can even, monitor all of that too. So it's an awesome app. So, yeah.
Thank you. Lisa, how do you keep your budget?
I'm a little different. I'm a little old school. I use a spiral notebook. I start my ledger with my take-home pay, and then from there I start to write out rent, card payments. I actually write out the name of whatever it is that I'm putting the amount of money towards, so that I can see it, because I'm also a visual person. And as I'm going down, I'm also subtracting from the initial amount that is supposed to be deposited or supposed to be in my account. I also incorporate my nails. I like getting a pedicure every pay period, and so I incorporate that into my budget, so that I can see that it's there, it's part of my budget, and it's accounted for. And then at the end of that, I'm able to see if I have any monies left for anything else. If I don't, then I know, okay, I got to wait until next pay period, and then I just start a new ledger from there.
You know what I really like that you pointed out is that you include some fun money in your budget, because I find that when I'm working with somebody on creating a budget, and we are thinking about cutting back on expenses, sometimes people will just wipe out every fun thing in their budget. And if you do that, then you end up hating your budget, right? So if you take all the fun out of that and say no more pedicures, no more coffee in the morning, you're gonna end up hating your budget. So no matter how thin or stretched your budget is, I think it's really important that you figure out how to incorporate some fun money in there and give yourself permission to spend on something you want to spend, even if it is $10 or $15 a month. But I think that's a really good point, and it's a really good strategy so that you don't end up hating your budget, that you really see it as a written plan, and it's giving yourself permission to spend in certain categories. I really love that all three of you have different ways of budgeting. I think what's most important for everybody to take away is that a budget doesn't have to be complicated, but it does need to be out of your head. So you can write it down in a notebook like Lisa, you could use a spreadsheet like Damian, or you could use an app like Krishna, but the point is to get it out of your head. Krishna, if you were sitting down with a friend and working on a budget, how would you get them started?
Okay, what I would tell them to write down all their monthly income and other expenses and include your fixed monthly expenses. Those are expenses that don't change from month to month, like your rent, your car payment, or your cell phone bill. And then include your flexible monthly expenses like your gas and groceries. And finally, don't forget about those expenses that only happen once or twice a year. Like you might forget about your car registration or holiday spending. You do not want to forget about your holiday spending especially, so yeah.
Okay, so say you do that and your expenses are more than your income. Lisa, what would you recommend?
What I would recommend is looking at your expenses. Like I said, I'm a visual person, so I actually, on the side of my ledger, if there are things that are extra, I'll put it on the side and I'll be able to look at that. And I know that there are certain things that I may need to take out, which I took out sodas. Buying sodas from a vending machine, because they're anywhere from $2 to $2.50 each. And if you buy a 6-pack of sodas at the grocery store, they're anywhere from $2.50 to $3. And so you're saving a lot of money there, and you're able to incorporate something that I love, which is a soda a day or two, back into my budget and not exceed my expenses.
It's funny that you mentioned that, Lisa, because I usually go to the grocery store and I see the vending machines, 50 cents for a can of soda. And I'm like, Mom, that's a great deal. Or 25 cents, that's a great deal, that's a steal. But once you really do the math, it actually costs more than buying a 6-pack of those cans. So that's something that they get you. They make it seem like a great deal. Another way to increase your income is by being aware of opportunities like scholarship opportunities. ACC has scholarship opportunities that you can apply for every semester, is it? Every year? You can also get a side hustle. I know having a part-time job while you're in school is very difficult as a student, but it is doable by managing your time, having that self-discipline. It is possible and sometimes necessary when you don't have other forms of income.
Yeah, I especially love that you pointed out the scholarship. So you're right, ACC has lots of scholarships available for students, and there are 2 main deadlines, and one of them is November 1st, and that November 1st deadline is for scholarships that are awarded in the spring semester. And then in the spring semester, the scholarship deadline for scholarships awarded in the fall is usually April 1st. But yeah, I think that's a really great point. And I think, Krishna, you mentioned that earlier, that as a young student, you didn't even think about applying for scholarships, but really applying for scholarships is a way that you can essentially increase your income, right? So even if you're just getting a scholarship for $500, like that is really valuable. That can cover books, right? That's books for the semester. So I love that you mentioned scholarships.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and make sure that you guys are also completing the FAFSA, which is a free application for the federal student aid every year. The FAFSA for the 2020-2021 school year comes out on October 1st. The FAFSA determines whether you're eligible for grants like the federal Pell Grant, which is money you don't have to repay, and it also determines your eligibility for student loans. Student loans are something that you do have to repay, but do keep in mind that just because you're offered them doesn't mean you have to take them.
When we come back from a quick break, we'll pick up our conversation and talk about how to incorporate savings into your budget.
ACC, you've been excellent to me. I'm actually from Monroe, Louisiana, so I came out here for opportunities, and the first college I was interested in is coming to ACC. It's not as big as the universities, but I think that's kind of good because you get to focus a little bit more instead of being around a whole lot of people. Really broad out here. I get to meet new people every day, and it's really nice. Just get to know the teachers and things like that. They really help you. Coming from Monroe, I didn't have many opportunities, so having opportunities like this is really a blessing to me. So I never take anything for granted. So I'm out here trying to make opportunities. So I'm not really trying to play around anything like this. So I'm pretty much on a mission. Okay. My name is Trayshawn Johnson. I'm majoring in engineering, and I plan on transferring this fall of 2018.
As a nation, we are terrible savers. A recent Federal Reserve Bank report concluded that 40% of Americans don't have enough cash saved to cover a $400 emergency. And in a recent survey completed by ACC students, we found that 56% of ACC students say they would have trouble getting $500 in cash or credit to meet an unexpected need within the next month. That brings me to my next question for our peers. How much should you have in savings?
The general recommendation is that you should have an emergency fund of at least 3 to 6 months set aside. But for students, that may be an unrealistic amount. As a student, we recommend that you have at least $500 set aside for emergencies.
And hey, if you can have $500 set aside for an emergency, you're doing better than 40% of Americans. If I'm a student and I have nothing in savings, Damian, how do you recommend I start?
That's a great question, Karen. A popular tool that the Student Money Management Office offers is actually the Student Savings Chart. It's a chart that allows students to save $500 within the year in 52 weeks. So with every week, you have a certain amount on this chart. It's like a 12 by 12 chart, and you're able to take off one by one every week, however much you want. $15 saved that week, $12 saved that week. There's even emojis on there. If you want to skip that week, you want to go to the movies instead, there's that. In any order you want, but it encourages students to save $500 in 52 weeks.
I was gonna say too with that too. When my son saw that, he said that it was bingo. So yeah,
Bingo.
it's a fun.
Yeah, it's supposed to be an interactive, fun experience.
Fun way to save money.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, we often get pictures from students who will have the savings charts tacked up on their bulletin board or at their desk at work, and they'll share with us their progress. And so I know a lot of students are using it to save for emergencies, but also I've had a lot of students who are using it to save for holiday spending. Some are using it for a vacation. So it's really just making savings fun, right? So like as your son said, it looks like bingo. It sure does. Yeah, but it's making it fun.
And doable.
Yeah, most definitely.
And I want to stress also that amount of money that you set aside each month isn't what matters. As long as you're setting aside something, like for example, for me, I set aside $40 each month and I just work that into my budget.
Lisa, last semester you spent a lot of time researching resources available for ACC students. Can you tell us about the Student Emergency Fund?
Yes, so if that financial emergency happens and you don't have the money to cover it, ACC has a great resource for students called the Student Emergency Fund. The application is available online, or you can visit the Support Center office on your campus. The request has to be for a true financial emergency, and you have to be an enrolled ACC student in an academic credit only program.
As Lisa mentioned, we recommend that every ACC student has at least $500 set aside for a financial emergency. And we know it's sometimes hard to get started, so we created a program to give you the push that you need. We're now accepting applications for ACC students to participate in our Rainy Day Savings Program. So in this program, we open a savings account for you at University Federal Credit Union. If you already have an existing account at University Federal Credit Union, great. We'll still open a new savings account for you specifically for the Rainy Day Savings Program. We complete the account paperwork for you and we deliver it to University Federal Credit Union. They fund your account with an opening deposit of $5, and then you start contributing to your account. As you're contributing to the account, you're also completing certain tasks to earn up to $100 in cash incentives. And those incentives are deposited directly into your new savings account at UFCU. This semester, you can choose 4 of 6 cash incentives, each worth $25. So you can earn $25 for meeting with a financial coach, $25 for completing an online financial literacy course, $25 for setting up direct deposit into your rainy day savings account, $25 for completing the free application for federal student aid. You probably have heard that referred to as the FAFSA. And $25 for attaining a balance of $475 or greater for 30 or more days. So if you want to get the maximum benefit from the program, You commit to depositing $400 of your own money and claiming the maximum $100 in incentives. And that way you'll have at least $500 set aside for a rainy day. You have from the time we open your account through the end of the spring semester to save and claim your incentives. We have 150 spots still available. After we've filled all 150 spots, we'll maintain a waiting list. Now, the money that you accumulate in your rainy day savings account at University Federal Credit Union is yours, and it's there for when you have a financial emergency. So a couple months from now, if you're on your way out the door to class and your car won't start, you can use your funds in your account to pay for your car repair. After paying for your car repair, you commit to rebuilding your balance in your rainy day savings account and continue to claim any incentives you haven't yet claimed. Last year was our first time offering the program, and 91 students collectively saved $43,016. And that doesn't capture the money they took out along the way to cover a few emergencies that came up, like a roommate who skipped town, leaving the other roommate with rent, a root canal, a visit to the vet, and lost work hours due to a hospital stay. So if you want to review the eligibility guidelines, and if you want an application, visit smmo.info/save. You can also text SAVE to 512-778-0724, and I'll text you a link to our online application. Before we leave the topic of savings, I'm really interested to hear, what are some things you're saving for right now?
For me, I have two different things. So last year, my goal was to go ahead and set up the rainy day savings program and have an emergency fund set up. So I already did that. So the new one that I set up for this year is I'm going to be going in the spring semester into my program in a new university. And so it requires for me to go ahead and not work for a whole year because I'm going to be student teaching during the day, and then at night I'm going to be doing my courses. So you're not supposed to work. So then in order to make this feasible for me, I want to go ahead and pay off my car, so that way that's already taken out. And then also I want to go ahead and set up kind of like, I guess, like an IRA account, but through my employer. And it's the 403b2. So I have a year to go ahead and get it started, and so they help you match with that. And since I've been with the system for so long, it will still stay there. And I want to say that, you can still contribute into it, but I'm going to find out about it. But that's, one of my goals for this year.
Great, so starting to save for retirement.
Yes.
That's great.
Yes.
Great. Damian, what are you saving for right now?
What am I saving for? To branch off of Krishna IRA, that's something that I am investing in, a Roth IRA account. At work, I was able to do an automatic savings of like $5 every week, and I get paid like every week. So every week, I put in $5 into a Roth IRA.
That's awesome.
And little by little, it'll accumulate. And over time, we were talking about time earlier and the importance of time. Compound interest hopefully will, build it. It is a little that I can afford, $5 a week, but and as a student, that's all I can really afford. But I'm hoping that with this little amount, this little nugget of gold, I can invest it into something bigger to pay off my student loans as well, save up for that as well. That is a big priority.
Damian, you bring a really good point up about savings. The point isn't how much you save, but the point is that you do it consistently every week or month. And so I love that, $5 a week is going into your savings account. And even though that might not feel like a whole lot, when you look at it over the course of a month, that's $20 that you're saving every month, right? And so, slow and steady, as long as you're doing it regularly, the habit of savings is what counts more than how much you're saving. And I know a lot of students get really hung up on that because they feel like, I don't have any money to save. And I mean, I completely understand, especially as a student, your focus is on getting through school and doing well in your schoolwork. Most all of our students also have some kind of employment, and also a lot of bills and other responsibilities. But if you can just find $5 or $10 and you start setting that aside, as time goes, you will have something set aside, so the amount doesn't matter.
Also doing it automated, you don't even see the money going in. You know, it just goes in smoothly. You don't even think about it, look at it. And the idea that it slowly builds up is good. Yeah, I know it's a little bit, but every little bit counts, right?
And so when you say automated, tell me more about
Correct.
that.
Automated, as in when I went to my employer and I filled out some paperwork and told them, I want money from my paycheck going directly into this IRA account. And instead of doing it manually by taking out the money and having to do it manually, it's much easier, much easier. And I don't even look at how much I have in there, because if I feel like if I look at it, I'll dog on myself, you know, I'll be hard on myself, you know, it's only this much, you know, why am I going to continue? A sense of helplessness. But instead of looking at it, by withholding looking at it, it gives me more peace of mind.
Good. That's a really good strategy.
Yeah.
Lisa, is there anything you're saving for right now?
I am actually saving for a refrigerator right now. I am wanting to purchase one without having to use a credit card or without having to take out a loan. So I am actually saving $20 a pay period until I'm able to get enough to purchase my refrigerator.
Yeah, those are some really great savings goals. We're taking another break, but we'll be right back and talk about another topic students are always asking us about: credit cards.
I originally went into welding right out of high school, and so I saw all of the rustic metal chairs and sconces and lighting and everything that they could do, and I was like, I could do that, and that would be awesome. ACCTV creates a lot of opportunities for people to explore their creative side, but also I love being able to have a finished product when I'm done with my work. It's so fulfilling to have, like, I can point to that and say, I built that. I'm currently employed as a TIG welder for UT, and I got that job specifically because I was at ACC.
The top questions we get asked in the Student Money Management Office have to do with credit cards. Students often ask, how do I get one and how do I use one? And those are really great questions. And our number one piece of advice is, before you get a credit card, you need to thoroughly understand how to use one. Remember I mentioned that as a nation we're terrible savers? Well, one thing we're really, really good at is spending money. Over the past 5 years, credit card debt has increased over 29%, and the average credit card balance earlier this year was $6,028. Credit cards make it very easy and super convenient to spend your money, and it makes it easy to go into debt, and we don't want you to go into debt. Damian and Krishna, there are two types of credit cards. Can you explain the two different types?
Yes, one type of credit cards are bank credit cards. These credit cards are offered by commercial banks and other financial institutions. Bank credit cards usually carry the brand of the major payment processors, such as Visa or MasterCard, although the actual lender is the bank that issues the card. If you have an excellent credit score, you may find a card with an interest rate of 14% or higher. In order to get a bank credit card, you generally have to have good credit. Someone with no credit, for example, will have a hard time getting a bank credit card.
The other kind of credit cards that are issued are store cards, and those are cards that are issued by places like department stores or clothing stores. Now, typically these cards can only be used at one of their locations. Say, for example, you have a Target credit card, you can only use your Target credit card at Target. Store cards are generally easy to get for people who have no credit history, and thus some people recommend them as a way to start building credit. However, we urge caution with store cards. Store cards have much higher interest rates than bank credit cards. It's not uncommon for store cards to have interest rates over 20%. The other reason we urge caution is if you use store cards, there is a temptation to spend. Marketers are really, really good at their jobs. Once you have a store credit card from your favorite clothing store, you will get card member-only offers and hard-to-resist coupons urging you to come into their store and buy. So depending on your money personality and discipline, this may tempt you into overspending.
Both Damian and Krishna mentioned interest rate. That's a really important term for you to be familiar with as you learn about credit cards. The interest rate is how much money you pay for the convenience of borrowing money. I think the best way to explain this is by taking a look at an example. Let's say our friend Joe decides he really needs and wants a new laptop, and he doesn't have the cash saved up for the purchase. The store he is purchasing the laptop from offers him a credit card to finance his laptop purchase. So the laptop costs $2,000. This is a top-of-the-line laptop. This is now the balance on his credit card, also called the principal. Now the minimum monthly payment on his credit card is $60. This is a store credit card, so the interest rate is pretty high at 22.24%. Every month, Joe sends $60 to pay his credit card. Let's take a look and see how that affects his balance or his principal. To figure out how much of his $60 is going towards just paying the interest, we take the credit card balance and multiply it by the interest rate. Then we divide by 12, the number of months in a year. When we do that, we determine that $22.94 of his first $60 monthly payment is going towards paying the interest. So, after making his first payment on his credit card, Joe still owes $1,977.06. Making the minimum payments like this, Joe will pay a total of $3,180 over 4 years and 4 months. So perhaps this is the motivation for Joe to change his strategy and either save up for a laptop or perhaps look at a less expensive option. What else should Joe consider with his credit card?
He should know that he doesn't have to just make the minimum payment. In fact, he should try to pay much more than the minimum payment every month. Also, I'd like to jump in and talk about a common myth I hear from my friends and peers. Most people think that in order to build your credit, you have to keep a balance on your credit card. That is not true. Carrying a balance month to month on your credit card does not improve your credit score. In fact, we recommend paying off your credit balance in full every single month. That way you completely avoid paying the interest rate.
I think another important thing for students to consider when using credit card is that it is not extra cash in your pocket. You have to look at it as another way to spend the money that you already have. I have a credit card that has a limit of $1,500. That means yes, today I can go to my favorite store and buy $1,500 worth of stuff like a laptop or clothes. But if I have that mentality, then I will overspend and I will go into debt. To base my spending, I have to look at what cash I have in my checking account, not what credit limit I have on my credit card.
Thank you. Those are really important things to consider. Now, if you're someone who has little credit history and thus can't easily get a bank credit card, you do have another option. Secured credit cards are offered by most banks and credit unions, and they provide people who have little or poor credit history a way to establish credit. Secured credit cards are a type of credit card that require a fee to open, and they're backed by your savings account used as collateral on the credit available with the card. The limit, which is often $500 to $1,000, is based on the amount in your savings account. Now, the physical card looks just as a bank card would. You use the card to make small monthly purchases that you would incur anyway, such as gas for your car. Then you pay it off in full every month to avoid interest charges. Now, if you mess up by not paying your credit card, for example, money in your savings account will be used to pay your balance and your card will be revoked. We covered a lot just now on credit cards. I want to highlight 2 main points for you. First, when using a credit card, adopt the mentality that it is another way to spend money you already have. And second, avoid credit card debt by paying off your balance in full every single month. I'd like to wrap up today with one more financial question I'd like to ask of each one of our peers. Learning how to manage your money, it's not a one-time thing. We all have to be continuously learning and refining our financial knowledge, especially as our situations change. So do you have any recommended resources that you use to keep up on your financial knowledge?
Yes, I do have. I follow. I'm a tech girl, like I said earlier. So I follow some blogs on the Instagram actually. So I follow the Financial Diet, and they actually have a book too. And then also Clever Girl Finance. And then basically every day whenever I'm looking through my Instagram feed, they kind of send like little tips, and things that you can do, like cut back on something today, or just little memes here and there. But it's just kind of reminds me to keep on track with my budget or whatever it is. Yeah.
I would highly recommend folks, not only students, but for adults, for anybody who's in our audience, to ask questions. Ask questions. If I'm not sure, I ask Karen, a financial coach, or I ask my mother, or I even type it in on Google like I was mentioning earlier. If I'm not sure, I just ask a question, and if I'm not, I look at my Excel sheet, like I had also mentioned, because if I'm honest with myself with those numbers will not lie to me. They will tell me, Damian, you've spent over $50, over $200 this month. You really need to start cutting back.
I have had the opportunity to build a rapport with my financial coach, Aisha. And so when I have financial questions in my life, I normally will either email her or set up a meeting with her so that I can kind of throw it off as somebody that is knowledgeable and that knows me and that has good information to help me with this process.
Now, most of us know that saving money is really important, but as we talked about, most Americans have little to no savings. So what do you guys think? Why do people not save money?
I think most of us just kind of think that there's always a tomorrow, and you think, I have all this time in the world. So you do not, start a savings account, from when you're, 18, 19. And so, that actually happened to me. I barely started saving maybe a couple years ago. And, I'm kind of trying to play the catch-up game now. So I had, trying to set up, my emergency savings account, and then, then start investing into, IRA and, a retirement savings account too. So just, trying to catch up. But like I said, we don't really have enough time, and especially now, that I'm at my age, I'm 34. And so I think, yeah, I'm seeing, that age where I'm going to retire, getting closer and closer. And I definitely don't think I have enough time. So I'm trying to play catch up, getting everything, funded that I need to, in case, for a rainy day. And then the retirement savings, count. So yeah, we don't have all the time in the world, unfortunately. So yeah.
Dang, Krishna, what a good input. I definitely praise the fact that you're not giving up, that you're still investing. Because something that I believe Americans don't save money, reasons are because of a YOLO mentality that's developed, with recent generations. And also learned helplessness. And why do I say that? Well, when you do reach your tomorrow, you may not have that much money in your bank account. People live their younger lives, spending a lot of their money, investing in things that may not be worth it, for example, cars. That's a whole conversation in itself. But it's really just spending your money where you get it. When I was 18, I would spend every paycheck, living the paycheck to paycheck, which a lot of Americans do actually. But once I lost my car at the age of 20, a lot of my savings were gone too. And that is when I had a reality check and realized I can't be as helpless as I am. I lost all my money, I lost my car, I'm in school debt. What am I gonna do? Well, I realized that by not giving up, it's okay to continue saving. Start from scratch again. Don't just give up and lose hope. No matter what age you are, whatever status you're in, it's okay to continue saving because eventually that money's gonna invest in you again.
I myself actually had a near-death experience, and I decided that I was going to spend every penny that I had, that I made, that I had in savings, because I didn't want anybody else to spend it if something happened to me. So every paycheck I would spend until there was nothing left. And I just continued that mentality until I actually joined the Peer Money Mentor program, and that is actually when I started to save because of the rainy day fund program. That helped me get back into the mentality of it's okay to save and it's good to save. And I started to allow my direct deposit to continue to go in after I had finished the program. And I ended up needing that money and was able to use it for a dental emergency. If I had stayed in the mentality that I had of spending every penny, then I would not have had the money I needed for my dental emergency.
Yeah, I definitely notice when I'm working with people on figuring out how to save that most of us make it out to be way more complicated than it has to be, right?
Yeah.
And by making it, or having this perception that it's more complicated than it has to be, it drops way far down on our priority list.
Yeah.
And I completely get that, because especially if you have kids at home, you have to go grocery shopping, you have a job, you have classes. Yeah, of course, like this is a would like to have thing, so it drops lower on your priority list, right? And then compounding that is we make it out to be way more complicated than it has to be. But we mentioned this earlier, you know, if you can go to your employer, if you have direct deposit set up through your employer can split your paycheck into multiple accounts. And so if you can schedule out 20 minutes of your workday to go talk to your HR department and get that piece of paperwork that allows you to split your paycheck up and say, hey, every time I get paid, send $20 to my savings account, and then the net, send it to my checking account. You spend 20 minutes doing that, and you've just set yourself up for having a substantial savings account within a few years, right? And so it's not complicated. It does take time, but not a whole lot of time. So I really suggest, if you want to get started with savings, just carve out 20 minutes.
Yeah.
If you've got that option with your employer to set up direct deposit, that's the best way. It's that set it and forget it. You don't even know that it's gone. And like you said, like, yeah, you just kept going after you didn't have to continue those regular monthly deposits. And, you know, little pieces add up, right?
And once you have that direct deposit set up and you have budgeted it into your account, you no longer see it. So it's already coming out before you actually see your paycheck hit your actual account that you utilize. So for me, that was a plus, and it made it easier for me because I had forgotten about that $30 that I allotted to go into my rainy day fund because that wasn't my net gross coming into my account anymore. So I just completely forgot about it. And it just goes in every pay period.
And do you believe that had you had that money in your hand, would you have saved all of it?
No, I would not have.
Neither would I. Which is why automated savings is convenient, you know.
It makes it so much
I wouldn't have
easier.
taken the drive to go to my bank and save it, or you know, to do it electronically through my app. You know, they even make apps to make it easier, and I still won't do it.
I won't do it.
You know, yeah, not at all. But every month, you know, it's important to really look at yourself and self-reflect.
That's all the time we have for today. Thank you to our 3 Peer Money mentors for sharing their tips and stories with us. If you're interested in becoming one of our Peer Money mentors at ACC, we'll open the application for our spring cohort in November. Details can be found on our website, austincc.edu/money, or by following us on social media. Thank you so much for watching the forum, and I hope you learned a little something about money management which you can take into the future today. My name is Karen Serna from ACC Student Money Management Office. We're located at the South Austin campus, but you'll find our staff conducting workshops and financial coaching sessions on all ACC campuses. To make a financial coaching appointment with one of us or get enrolled in the Rainy Day Savings Program, the best way to contact us is via email at money@austincc.edu. Stay tuned for our next episode of The Forum.